Okay, so now we have Gwendoline Coates, who is a student on the MA in Creative Writing at Canterbury Christchurch University. Here she is writing her second novel set in the Shetland Islands, which was her home until 2010. She then moved to a remote small holding in the mountains of Abruzzo in Italy, where her interest in depopulation continued as she witnessed the number of people living in the nearest village halve within 5 years. Her first novel is set in this region during the earthquakes of 2017-2018 and is currently with an editor.
Thank you. Hello. This is not part of my novel set in Shetland. This is a short story. And it's set in the tiny group of islands called Out Skerries, far to the north of the Scottish mainland and furthest east of the Shetland Islands. It's true to say that the population has diminished to the point of probable evacuation. And in fact, since I wrote the abstract, when I said there were about 35 people, it's now down to 29. But my characters are entirely fictional. And if anyone has read the abstract, Arthur has changed from Maggie's brother to Maggie's husband. Out of the Out Skerries. I stand on the pier, taking care not to tread on the tiny white eye-bright flowers growing between the stones, looking out across the water as the island ferry, the Filla, chugs away back to Lerwick, the town on the main island. It carries one truck, one trailer with 4 lambs, and 1 foot passenger, my teenage daughter Inga, who's gone to stay with her school friend for a week. It's a clear day in July, and the sun is dazzling, sparkling on the ripples of the waves and throwing every crevice of the cliffs into sharp relief. A cloud scuds across and the sea transforms from gold to silver. The land turns silhouette-y black like slick, wet rock. The sea pinks or banks fleur carpet the tops of the cliffs, starting to fade now from pink to white, drying in the sun and the wind. The flowers are almost crispy. I can see the outline of the island of Walsey far to the southwest. We are the furthest east of the furthest north, my husband Arthur always says. The best place to be in the whole wide world. But few people agree with him these days, and there are now fewer than 30 of us still here, clinging on like the guillemots on their tiny patches of impossible cliff. We feel precarious, our population ever dwindling. We are a little known species nearing extinction. Just imagine, I'd said to Arthur a few years ago, just imagine if there were no more ferries. We laughed as if this were somehow beyond our imagination. But now I've started coming down to the pier just to watch the villa, keeping my fragile connection with the ferry as she comes less and less frequently. The oyster catchers have gathered on the beach in rows, having a conference about their wilderness, which the wildlife will soon have all to itself if the Shetland Islands Council has its way. The oyster catchers' bright orange beaks all point in the same direction, also watching the ferry. These birds always remind me of my mother because she used to imitate them. She'd put a carrot to her nose and strut around the kitchen, her red woolen stockings poking out beneath her black skirt. It made me and my little sister laugh. Then she'd put on her white apron and flap the sleeves of her black cardigan as though she was soaring in the air. "Mum, Mum, can we have a carrot, Mum?" we'd pester. And she'd give us the smallest ones to copy her. We'd all fly around the kitchen, out of the door, onto the stony beach, making the clip, clipping cry. Then, staying in our bird characters, we'd collect cockles for tea. I remember Mum telling us that oyster catchers can live for a very long time. "Some of them are even older than me," she said, and she must have been in her mid-30s by then. And they pair for life. This last was said with emphasis. We girls were supposed to take note. So now, how can I even think about leaving? Because things are not the same anymore on this island. That's how. It's time I went back to the house. I walk away from the pier and up towards home. This is the only road here, less than 1 mile long. From the pier on Brore, the bridge aisle, across to Husay, the house aisle. Along the burn, there's an absolute riot of brilliant yellow king cups, truly like miniature golden goblets for kings and queens. Riotous, yes, that's the mood emerging from the peaty bogs and the leftover people. We really cannot stay if the council stops the ferries. The tatties are in flower, lilac flowers with yellow centres. We grow lots of different varieties of potato, keeping the rare ones alive, rather like us, as Arthur says. This place used to be buzzing with activity on a summer's day. Tractors in the rigs, people working in their kitchen gardens, children laughing, dogs barking, helping and hindering, the hammering of outdoor repairs. There's hardly any washing flapping in the wind. There's such a sense of sad abandonment. My own washing lines are strung carefully through the belt loops of Inga's slender jeans and the gills of some fish I salted yesterday. They're hung out to dry, like the people here. I pick a bunch of wildflowers to cheer me up, red campion and ragged robin, and arrange them in a summer sea blue jug on the kitchen table. Then I put the roasted mutton soup to heat on the stove. This too reminds me of my mother. She would steep a leg of mutton in brine and then hang it up in the chimney to smoke. But we don't have a fire anymore. Everyone converted their stoves years ago from burning peat to burning oil. At the time, we thought it was a good idea, but now I'm not so sure. I don't miss the work, but I do miss the smell, that peat reek. These days, I buy the mutton from the butcher in Lerwick and it comes out on the ferry. Arthur comes in for lunch, taking off his boots and his blue overalls in the porch, hanging up his cap and washing his hands. Those big, strong hands, gnarled from 30 years of hard work and oily from the sheep. My blue-eyed, fair-haired Viking of a man, The man I have loved since I was 16, the only man I have ever loved. Always together, but now we are being divided like a sharp knife cutting through soft dough. I put out the bowls of soup and wait for him to spread his slice of bread with thick yellow butter. I take a deep breath. I think, Arthur, we should go and look at the house near Lerwick. You know, the one the council is offering us. That black-faced Jew got through the fence again this morning, says Arthur. He chews a chunk of mutton and fixes me with a stare. She thinks the grass is greener on the other side. She might be right, I think. Sometimes it is. About the house, I persist. It would make it so much easier for Inga to get into Lerwick for school. And the library, you know how much she loves the library. And she's such a bookworm. And she could see her friends whenever she likes. She could just hop on a bus. Arthur butters another slice of bread. I'll make a triangle of sticks this afternoon to put round the ew's neck for a day or two while I mend the fence. I don't like doing it, but it's better than her getting stuck again. I grind more salt into my soup and Arthur's wounds. It would be so nice to be near my sister, I say, not to mention your brother. These two families left when their children were the only ones remaining in the Out Skerries school. It seemed so unfair on them not to have any other children in their lives. Arthur kept on saying that Husay was the best and safest place in the whole wide world to bring them up. But when they left, it was the death knell for the school, which was mothballed by the council. And the moths have been steadily eating away at the fabric of the island ever since. Holes have been appearing, not necessarily visible until you touch the material and find it no longer holds together. The secondary department of the school closed in 2014 and the primary school 2 years later. Those of us who stayed were costing too much and more losses followed. We used to have an inter-island flight from Tingwall near Lerwick, landing perilously on the shortest runway in the world. At least it gave me a choice between my fear of flying and the often horrendously rough ferry crossing. The once thriving fishing industry was gutted by policy and quotas and foreign boats. Smaller things followed, our little luxuries, like the schoolhouse cinema, the smallest one in Scotland, with 20 blue velvet seats transported from an old cinema in Manchester. It came and went with the enthusiasm and quick disillusionment of another incomer. One of our 2 shops closed last year. No cafe, no pub. Some of our friends have even started making me feel guilty. We know you'd love it there, Maggie, but why should the rest of Shetland subsidize a few people on that God-forsaken outpost? It's not God who's forsaken it, I said indignantly to one of my former neighbours. It's most of the people, so that we no longer have a choice. The fewer people who stay here, the more we cost, and the more of those who remain want to leave. And now it's crunch time. Evacuation looms. What a horrible, crunchy word. It hovers above the Skerries like a bonksy, a great skewer, our biggest bird of prey, and hovers even here in our own kitchen, where it's killing us. I place a slice of cake on Arthur's plate, drizzling it with cloudberry syrup and all the love I can convey to this man who cannot bear to think about a different, and let's face it, a more sensible life. Along with the cake, I dish up the latest blow. Do you know the nurse is leaving? I ask. Arthur bangs his fist down on the table, making his soup slosh about like the waves in the bay this morning. Making waves, that's what I'm doing, making waves in the once calm waters of our marriage. Yes, I do know the nurse is leaving, but Maggie, as I keep saying, I am not. But it's not about us. It's about Inga. She has no future here, Arthur. However much we might wish that she did. He fixes me with his Viking stare. My great-great-grandparents were forced to leave in the clearances, cleared away like so much jetsam, in favour of sheep, for God's sake, sheep which were worth more to the laird than the people. I'm damned if I'm going to. I break down in tears, exhausted. Don't make me choose between my husband and my island. I'm not. He gets up and comes around the table to put his arms around me. He smells sweetly of sheep, with undertones of diesel oil and the familiar comfort of 30 years of sharing our days and our nights. You can have both, Maggie, he says, or neither. Don't give up, Maggie, don't give up. The day of the very last ferry has arrived. We have an unbearable breakfast. The conversation is too hot to handle and the porridge goes cold. Arthur cannot bear to come with us to the pier and he stays alone in the house. Inga cries as I drive the car, the only vehicle, onto the villa, and Jimmy chains it down to the open deck. The ferry pulls away from the pier. It's a smooth ride for the first minute while we're in the shelter of the harbour, looking towards the horizon and our new life. Then things get decidedly rough. Inga's tears flow more and more desperately as the waves get higher, and she suddenly bursts out with, Mum! Mum! Mum, it's the wrong decision. It's the wrong decision. We've got to go back. And I'm crying too. We can't. My darling, we just can't. She looks at me in exactly the same way as her father does, with the same implacable, fierce blue eyes, letting out a yell of exasperation. Oh! She gets out of the car and slams the door and storms off. And I put my head down on my hands on the steering wheel and sob, and sob, and sob. My whole body's aching. My head hurts and my eyes hurt and my back hurts. And now I feel a dragging sensation, like the beginnings of being in labour. I look up. Things are all the wrong way round. We seem to be turning. Inga yanks open the car door, face flushed and excited. "Ma'am, I asked them, I pleaded with the crew to turn round. I said I'd never forgive them if they wouldn't." "Oh, my darling Inga, we can't. It's all for your..." "Don't," she says, "don't you dare say we're leaving for my benefit. If it's for my sake, I bloody well want to go back." "But sweetheart, we'll be there all on our own." "Never," she says. "We'll be back with Dad." And look, the sea porpoises, the nissuks, have appeared, leaping out of the water and guiding us back into the harbour. I can see Arthur running along the road to the pier, and almost before the ramp is properly down, Inga leaps off and runs into her father's arms like she did when she was a little girl. "Go on," says Jimmy to me. "I'll drive the car off for you." So I run too, and Arthur's arms encircle us both. "Thank you," he whispers into my hair, which captures his words against the wind. It wasn't me. It was Inga. I had no chance with her on your side, and I'm laughing and crying. God knows how we'll manage. "But we will," says Inga, grinning. "The future is a foreign land. We will do things differently here. And that," says Arthur, "is the best beginning ever written."